East side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello, Adam. How's it going?
Hello, Brooke. How are you? It is completely strange weather in Minnesota today. We have had rain, ice, sleet, sneet, snow all today. Uh,
Sneet.
Sneet. It's snow sleet.
I figured that, but I just thought that was pretty funny.
It's like it's something I swear somebody made up this year because we just have so many variations of ice falling from the sky that we needed a new word. It's more snow than it is sleet, so it's sneet.
Sneet.
Yeah,
Sneet. It sounds like something from a Dr. Seuss book.
yeah. No, it definitely like rain, snow, sleet, sneet sounds like the start of a Dr. Seuss book about spring, quote unquote, weather in Minnesota.
It's what's his name? Something here's a who, and he's like in a new place, and it's all rain, snow, sleet, sneet.
Horton hates the weather.
Yeah.
Horton deals with climate change.
Oh man. Um, so this week, of course, Bridgerton dropped on Friday. Did I watch it
Yes.
all? I absolutely did.
You watched it all already? Wow.
Yeah, I
How many
completely
how many
binged it.
episodes is that though? Is it like 13, 20?
No, it's only 8.
Still 8. And they're
Yeah,
like substantial. They're not like 20-minute episodes.
they're like an hour.
Yeah.
So
That's
over the
that's a
course of the
good full day's
weekend,
work. Yeah.
yeah, I put in. It's my part-time job.
Yeah. Put in a good shift at the Bridgerton.
I was at first I was like, I don't know how this season's going to be because the first season dropped, of course, mid-pandemic,
Mhm.
and it drew everyone in. And not only, I mean, there are some shows that do well because they're good, but also they got that extra push because of the pandemic. Like Love is Blind. To me, I love that show. Great show. It also got a push because we were in a pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my friend and I like virtually watched it because we were both, pandemic quarantined in like a week. And now this year I'm still on like episode 4 because
Oh yeah.
it's just not as like one. I don't think the characters are as absurd as
Hmm.
they were the first season, or maybe it's all too familiar. But yeah, when it's not the pandemic, it just hits different. I think, as the kids say.
Hmm. Yeah. So I feel like the same with Bridgerton. Like it was good and it was interesting, but I do feel like it did get that extra push from the pandemic. And so this season I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna like it because the Duke's not back. Whatever. But no, it was really good.
I
It
love how I have
focuses.
like no, I have not seen an episode at all, so I'm going to enjoy it via your reaction to it.
Well, it focuses on a different member of the Bridgerton family. So the first
Oh,
season is Daphne, and then this season it's her eldest brother Anthony. Anthony. And so, it's the trials and tribulations of Anthony trying to find love. And of course, with all the gossip and all of that happens during this. Also I
as
watched.
is what you expect.
Yeah, of course, because you can't, it would be, silly to just he walk outside and then there's the love of his life. Who's gonna watch that?
It'd be a very boring show. It'd
Very
be like if
boring.
it was just them like planning the wedding. Actually, I could see that being interesting. But if they met right away and it's like, oh, everything is great,
Yeah.
we're in
So
love, and it was like, oh, what do you like? I like birds. Let's look at some birds. It's just them walking around looking at birds,
that'd be very boring, and I don't think they could fill 8 episodes. So
and that's not because we hate birds.
no. Mm-mm.
Birds are totally real.
You said that like so sarcastically. Like, yeah, birds are real.
Have you not seen the whole Reddit trend that was
Yes.
started as a okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
birds aren't real.
Birds are not real.
They're not
Um,
real.
I also watched Pam and Tommy. I started and finished Pam and Tommy, about Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. And so Tommy Lee um, comes off as a complete douchebag, which we knew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like that was a surprising character turn.
No, not at all. It did really make me like Pamela Anderson a bit more.
Well, and I've heard reports that even this series was made and she didn't want it to be made.
See, I could see that because one, it's like rehashing all of that again.
Right.
Like it does not portray her. Like I wondered, kind of was concerned, like, is it going to portray her in a negative light? Is it going to like slut shame her? It does not. If that's a concern of yours, I didn't feel like it did that at all. And actually, it, like I said, it made me like her more because I was like, okay, Pam's pretty, she stands up for herself and she's, um, it just it made me feel for her and it made me like her more.
And it's interesting, I think, and I'm sure somebody's done a retrospective of looking at how society has reacted over the last, and we're looking at what, 25 years now, 20 years, 20 something around there, because I think that happened mid 90s. 25 years, and how society reacted to her when that came out, to when other sex tapes have come out over the last 25 years. And if she was really the first one that had to deal with that on the multimedia level, and it has launched other people's careers to stratospheres where I don't think it helped hers.
Right because you look at someone like Kim Kardashian, who is ultimately famous because of a sex tape,
right.
Whereas Pam Anderson, it really kind of knocked her down.
Yeah, it stopped what was a like burgeoning movie career.
Yeah.
Not that Barbed Wire was the world's greatest movie, but it also wasn't the worst. Like, that's the type of movie that in the late 90s probably could have gotten 2 or 3 sequels just because.
Right. What else? I don't think I've watched, Disney Channel. I'm not the biggest Gabrielle Union fan, which you should not say here in Nebraska, because she's from here. But Disney Channel has a reboot of Cheaper by the Dozen, and it's Gabrielle Union and Zach Braff. Actually pretty cute. I give it a B.
And that would Disney's good at this though. They just besides the Star Wars and Marvel stuff, they don't seem like, some of their stuff they don't super promote. Like, I had no idea that was in the works. Maybe I'm just not watching the right Disney shows to get the trailer, but
I think I had read it that it was coming and then completely forgot about it, and then boom, Disney was like, here you go. And I was like, oh. But it was actually pretty cute. So if you've got, it's an hour and a half, of course, have some time, I would say check that one out.
Because the last was the last one Steve Martin?
Yep. And Bonnie Hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hilary Duff.
And Tom Welling.
Oh. Man, look at us just mentioning slowly the people that we can see on the cover of the.
No, I'm doing it from memory. Thank you.
Oh, I'm doing it from staring at the picture and trying to remember who these people are.
No, I was doing it from memory. But I think that's been my week.
I have watched, getting caught up on NCIS, which I think we talked a couple episodes ago about how I wasn't sure where the series was going as a whole, and how it was really interesting how they dealt with Gibbs's retirement, but then it didn't seem like they had a ton of focus. And it's been interesting in the last few weeks where I thought they were going to try to push the narrative to being really centered around Gary Cole's new character as the sort of lead of the team. They've done a much better job over the last 3 or 4 episodes, and I'm still catching up. I think I'm still an episode and a half behind. But they've had some really strong episodes focusing on other members of the team as sort of the league. There was a Wilder Valderrama one where he had to go undercover as a cage fighter. There was one where the Jimmy Palmer character, and I always forget that actor's name, and that's not fair, but the Jimmy Palmer and Cassie, the 2 scientists that usually stay in the building, are the focus of the whole thing because there is a potential virus gas poison of some kind. And dealt with Palmer's relationship with his daughter, who just of course happened to be there that day, as now has watched him in quarantine fighting for the antidote. So it's been really, and then another episode where they had
I actually saw part of that episode
where they were like trapped in the thing and like they were like trying not to go crazy. But it was really well done, and it gave the actors a lot of. It was a nice episode in that, like, so often it's like, okay, we got to go from place to place to place, and we're searching this down, but you don't get a lot of time to actually see the actors in a elongated like 2-on-2 scene where they're working through stuff. It was very much more like a theater piece where there was just there was stuff happening, and that was still very bouncy around. But this was really set in that the lab and the dealing with trying to get through the antidote, and also talking a lot about their feelings, which I thought was really well done. And then last night, the episode that I watched just for before bed, which I thought was perfect for today, dealt with the NCIS team investigating a murder that had been covered by a podcast. And then dealing with the fact that everyone who's like a very popular podcast, so everyone has their assumptions, including half the team who's listened to the podcast about, is the husband guilty or not, and then but still having to work through the case. I thought that was a really interesting way to do it. I mean, it's a very timely thing for a lot of shows to jump into, because everybody's listening to podcasts like you right now, person with ears. Thank you for that. But they did it really well. And I was like, oh, that's the perfect segue to tomorrow. So that was really fun. So if you just drop in and you're a podcast fan, but you want to watch an episode of NCIS, that one, and I will get the name of it here in a second, was a lot of fun. And it challenges a lot of the assumptions that we make, and also like some of the dangers that can come with podcasts and just social media, and making assumptions about cases that may not be completely determined yet. So that was kind of cool.
Okay, real fast. Speaking of podcasts and murders, Only Murders in the Building got a second season. Okay, continue.
Yes, they did, and I love that, because it really, like, I loved it, and then it got slow, and then by the end I was back into it again. So I'm very excited. Let's see. It is called The Wake. So I watched so many episodes last night, I didn't realize it. So The Wake, which actually just came out 2 weeks ago, is the episode of NCIS that deals with the podcast. So if you're not a big NCIS person, but you want to drop in for one episode and you do like podcasts, it's a fun little crossover.
Okay. All right. Of course, we have to quickly acknowledge what happened this past weekend at the Oscars.
Yeah. That was the most, like, and I have a tradition of watching the Oscars at my favorite restaurant, which is also a place that I work, and we sit down. It's the only time those TVs are not on sports, is the night of the Oscars. And the restaurant had just closed, and we had all dispersed to different locations to watch the rest of it. And a group text was fired off because somebody caught a glimpse of it on like a different stream or something. And then we were all talking about it, trying to figure what had happened, because we had missed it on the live broadcast. Did you see it live, or did you catch it after?
I caught it after. Yeah.
I'm still confused as if it broadcast in the US or if it didn't broadcast in the US or if it got cut away, because we have so many, like, we've all seen the video now and all the memes and all the clips, but I don't know if anybody here saw it live, because my friend said that he got it from somebody who found it in Australia or something.
So it did air here live, but there's a delay. So they were able to at least edit him cursing.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's intense.
It is very intense. So I'm sure you've heard Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith and her being bald, and Jada has been very open and vulnerable about having alopecia and her hair loss and not being able to grow hair. And
I think it's also important for context that was not the first joke that had been shot their way of the night.
And like, that's not the first joke he has made about Jada.
Yeah. So this was a cumulative, just to give context, in my opinion, there was a cumulative effect happening that evening.
Yes. So back in 2016, when Will and Jada boycotted the Oscars, and the hashtag was #OscarsSoWhite, he made fun of her then. Then it, like you said, it was not the first joke made at their expense that night. And then he makes this joke and she's got this medical condition. And then we see what the result was. The internet seems to be really split on it.
And I get that. I don't think anyone looks good in this scenario. I can see I can see rationalizations, not justifications, rationalizations for all sides in it. I don't know what I would have done had I been any of those people. And I can make assumptions, but I think everyone looks bad. And if anything, it's been a good exercise in us talking about, what are some things okay to joke about? How do we take jokes? How do people deal with being in the public eye? Is there a right way to stand up to somebody without using violence? When is violence acceptable? I mean, I think it's brought a really interesting conversation, but there's clearly been no consensus.
So he has, of course, issued an apology. Chris Rock issued an apology. Jada Pinkett says it's the season for healing and she's here for it. Will Smith is supposed to appear on Jada Pinkett's Facebook Watch show Red Table Talk to discuss it. The Academy is supposedly investigating it to decide whether or not they're going to take back his Oscar.
And that, if they do that, now you've opened up a can of worms, because how many people charged with crimes or sexual assaults have Oscars sitting at home somewhere? You going to go for them all?
And I had this exact conversation with someone, because I said that same thing. And the point they made to me, which is a valid point, is yes, true, but he did it at the show.
Right. He did it. And that's going to be the line of delineation. I think it's really, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall, because there are shots that you can see where right after it, where Will is clearly upset still after the yelling. And I think he realizes what he just did and what, he's not proud. But you've got Bradley Cooper and Tyler Perry and Denzel Washington all there having what seems to be a very intense but supportive conversation. And I wish I could have been like not a fly on the wall because they're in the middle of a room, but maybe a fly on the table or just buzzing around. Yeah. Right. So I could have heard that, because I think it would have been very interesting.
Yeah. So Chris Rock has a bunch of shows. I think he was in Boston this coming up weekend. They've completely sold out now. So there is, of course, the theory that it was fake, and that will, of course, add fuel to that fire.
When I first saw it, I thought it was a bit, because just like nobody reacted.
Right.
I think everyone was so in shock, but I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, that was just a really strange sketch."
Right. So we will continue to see how this progresses. I don't know that they're going to take his Oscar.
No, I think this is one of those, we had to look like we were thinking about it, and everyone is just hoping, like, on Monday morning when Will Smith and Chris Rock and anybody connected to this woke up, they were hoping that someone had done something dumb. Yeah. Somebody else, and we've made it like a couple of days without some other celebrity really doing something stupid, which is kind of amazing.
Which is really amazing, like extremely amazing. And the other thing I saw someone discuss, they talked about a couple of different award shows. Okay, like Conor McGregor trying to beat up Machine Gun Kelly. And then there was on another award show where Kid Rock was trying to fight like Tommy Lee or something. And I get that the scale of them is quite different.
Yeah.
But it's still people fighting or whatever at award shows.
Yeah. And I mean, every single like boxing or UFC weigh-in, they're supposed to get in a shoving match or say something about the other person's mama. I think it was just the fact that everyone was in tuxes and it's the Oscars. And the Oscars takes themselves so seriously that no one could. I think that's why no one reacted when it happened, because no one could believe it was real.
Right. But I think,
and this, I don't mean this disparagingly to Conor McGregor or Machine Gun Kelly or Kid Rock or Tommy Lee, but you kind of expect that type of attitude out of those gentlemen. They have a bit of a questionable background and violence, whereas Will Smith and Chris Rock do not. And Will Smith is like always been just a really like stand-up guy, and I think it was just so out of character for both of them that adds further to it. Somebody telling me Conor McGregor wanted to punch Machine Gun Kelly, and I'm like, was it a day that ended in Y?
What else? If you're a Foo Fighters fan, of course, sad news because Taylor Hawkins passed.
Yeah, and several of their shows have been canceled as well.
Yeah,
and they're understandably there's going to be some time for them to process this, but you really hope that it's not a point where they, because he was such a big part of the band that and it happened while they were on tour.
Yes, like as they were getting ready to go out for the night.
Yeah,
that's who was that? Was it Chester or was it no, it wasn't Chester. Who was it they found right before a show on the tour bus?
Was Scott Weiland.
Yes.
In Minneapolis at the Mall of America.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that was my 90s alt rock band, was Stone Temple Pilots. Seeing them live is still one of my top 5 concert experiences of all time. Wow. It's then I was talking with a friend on Monday night, and you mentioned Chester. He played for me a live performance of One More Light by Linkin Park, which is about dealing with death. That happened the day that Chester had found out that Chris Cornell had passed away. They were very close. So when you start going down that road of musicians and untimely deaths, it just seems to snowball. There's always another domino to fall. So hopefully this, there's always another memory because of people leaving too soon. But if you've never listened to that song, One More Light is beautiful and heartbreaking. And it's been on repeat this week for me, just trying to process all this stuff.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this. Just came out. This just broke today, a couple hours ago. Bruce Willis is retiring from acting because of being diagnosed with aphasia. Which,
I'll be honest, that is not a disease that I had really ever heard of. Is something that you've heard of?
I had, but never like really details of it until this, like, of course, now everybody's like, what is aphasia and what does it do? And it was really weird because it was like Demi Moore and her team like released a statement. And
they've had a very like supportive relationship even after a divorce. I mean, like when they split up and she was dating Ashton Kutcher, there's like the famous photo of them like Bruce driving the boat, the two of them hanging out in the back, and the kids are all there, and it's like, okay, I guess everyone's just cool with this.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's cool that they're able to do that because, well, let's face it, most of us are not.
Yeah. That is not a common thing.
Right. So the fact that he's got that, all the kids plus his ex and her current whoever, they're all like a big family. I think that's pretty cool. But apparently he's having trouble comprehending, because I was talking to my daughter about it, who's a nurse, and she was kind of looking it up because she's dealt with a few patients, and she was looking it up to explain it a little bit more. And she said there's actually 2 types. There's one where people have trouble comprehending, like, you and I are talking, and what I'm saying to you is just babble. And then the other is where they have trouble communicating, and like the example she gave was like, they want to say, can you pass me that blue pen? But it comes out, I'm sitting in that round ball.
You're right. Which would make acting very challenging.
Yes.
Also could be very interesting.
I'm not laughing at that.
I mean, I saw a tweet this week that somebody was on a Delta Airlines flight watching The Last Duel, but the closed captions had been messed up, and they were the closed captions from Knives Out. But they were so they watched this entire movie with the wrong captions, and it was like taking pictures of it when it would like oddly match up.
Oh my gosh.
So there would be some part of that aspect to it. But no, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I had actually been working on a A-side about one of Bruce's movies for a couple weeks now that kind of goes back to this trend of movies that are just absolutely panned and aren't great hits, but for some reason Adam keeps coming back to them as a comfort movie and finds them rather enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the unfortunate news today, that is actually a perfect segue into the A-side for today.
Well, have at it.
So, we've talked about my love for Bruce Willis going back to Hudson Hawk and also his album, The Return of Bruno, which was wonderful because there was no Bruno never left. So we didn't need to have him return.
Bruno. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. We don't, but we're going to now. So in the early 90s, every week, and I've mentioned this before as well, when Entertainment Weekly would come, my father had a subscription as part of his mass comm professorial duties. He could write it off on the taxes, so it was free, but it was also like every time it came in the mail, I grabbed it right off the kitchen counter and read it cover to cover. So I have this weird connection to any part of the entertainment industry that was considered or talked about or promoted or happened from like 1990 through 1999. And one of the movies that I remember the moment it was announced, reading about it in the little blurbs, and Entertainment Weekly was set up in such a way that it really worked for my preteen and teenage brain, in that there were articles that were 2-3 pages long, but then there were a lot of sections where it was just a paragraph of information. So it was all this bite-sized stuff that you could go through. And I always went to those first. Then I'd go back and read the articles if it was something I was really interested in, or when I, just got done with everything else. But the blurb sections where it was just bite-sized information were always the first place I'd go. And I remember when they first announced this new action movie starring Bruce Willis that was going to come out in 92 or 93, and how excited I was about it because it seemed so unique. The irony being that it was simply the most formulaic, perhaps, of all action movies of that genre and at that time. And for many critics, that's what held it back. For me, it felt so unique because instead of it being a cop on the regular streets, it was a cop on the river. What? Which is the only difference from pretty much every cop show ever. But it was originally called Three Rivers. It was eventually, the title was changed to Striking Distance, and it starred Bruce Willis as a Pittsburgh police homicide detective, and his name was Tom Hardy. This is well before Tom Hardy was a thing. Mm-hmm. But their characters were very similar. The film co-starred, it actually had a pretty awesome cast, and I do not love one of these actors, but this is probably the role of theirs that I have enjoyed the most. I don't know that I've enjoyed Sarah Jessica Parker in anything else except Striking Distance, but she does a rather understated role, but also isn't given a heck of a lot to do. It also had Dennis Farina, Tom Sizemore. Man. Oh yeah, it was, and all the pieces. Robert Pastorelli was in it. John Mahoney, who played Fraser's dad, plays Bruce Willis's dad. And dropping this in here, it is the A-side, so I'm going to spoil a 30-year-old movie. Just so you know. If this is your first time, if you stumbled upon this, you're like, okay, this looks like a fun true crime podcast. Now we're about 15-20 minutes in, and you're like, what is happening? The true crime's coming, but also I'm going to spoil a 30-year-old movie. The beginning of the movie, Bruce Willis, his father played John Mahoney, who played Fraser's dad, get in a car accident, and the bad guy kills John Mahoney. So he's only in the movie for like 5 minutes, and it's rough. But you had Timothy Busfield, great character actor Byron James, who is always plays like a cop, but also often a bad guy. He was in Blade Runner. He was in Another 48 Hours. He was like the general in The Fifth Element. He's actually been in a couple Bruce Willis movies. That's interesting. Nice overlap, probably just because of their genre. Timothy Busfield was in it. Andre Braugher is in it.
Oh wow!
It's a lot of really good actors, and you thought that this looks like it's going to be a big film. So it's a police detective movie from the early 90s. So you've got a police detective who rats on his partner for excessive force, and then his partner ends up seemingly committing suicide, and there's a serial killer involved in the city, but everybody's related, and then he gets busted down from being a regular cop to being a boat cop. So he's a cop on the Allegheny River, I think. And of course, because it is the 80s and 90s, after you've been demoted, you're given a new partner who's a female. And then at first you don't like each other, and then eventually they fall in love. So all of those things being very formulaic seemed super interesting to 12-year-old Adam at the time. And I've gone around and around in my brain if whether or not I got to see this in the theater. And I think I did. And I don't think I was supposed to.
Ooh.
Because it was right around that age where, like, was I really old enough for PG-13 R movies? Because I was 12, 13. And I think I got to see this one in the theater, but I don't know that my mom knew I did. So, Mom, apologize for that. Either way, either I saw it in the theater or on VHS not too long after. But it was a movie that I've always really enjoyed because it has twists, it has turns, it has this sort of, Bruce Willis at that point is fresh off of his biggest hits, and my family watched him in Moonlighting when I was a kid, so I always really liked Bruce Willis and had this connection to him. We were always more of a Remington Steele family than Moonlighting. Remington Steele was number one, but Moonlighting was a very close second. Okay. So Pierce Brosnan first, but then Bruce Willis. So always had an affinity for him. The movie, however, on rewatches does have a little bit of a drag to it. And after doing some research over the last couple of weeks, it is available on Amazon Prime to stream for free with your subscription. You can rewatch it. It is a movie that feels very tense when you're 12 years old and feels very slow when you're 41. It doesn't move quickly. A lot of the acts are kind of seemingly telegraphed ahead of the time, and then there's a lot of red herrings to try to throw you off and make it feel like a mystery. And then there's the big twisted towards the end where the person you thought was dead is now back, and it's really been him all along, not the other cousin. And everyone's been trying to frame Tom, which is Bruce Willis's character, and even his partner turns out to be a internal affairs officer who was just assigned to him to get dirt on him so they could get rid of him. And then she herself perjures herself on the stand, and he doesn't get in trouble because now they're in love. And all of that seemed really intense, and like I was getting thrown for a lot of different twists and turns when I was a kid. But turns out to be, as an adult, you see it coming a little bit more ahead. It is still enjoyable. It's got some really good performances. Like I said, I think this is the only movie where I've really enjoyed Sarah Jessica Parker. It's fun to see the police chase motifs played out on a river in just a different sort of environment. But I did find a review from Roger Ebert from 1993, which points out all of the bits and pieces that were taken from other movies and jammed into this one. And this is his entire review. He barely talks about the movie specifically. He just points out all of the stereotypes and existing plot points that were used to get the movie put back together, and why it feels like we've all seen it before. So he goes, let's count the ways. It's about an outspoken Pittsburgh cop who gets in trouble for testifying against his partner. A serial killer is around. His family are all cops, so they're all involved. And then during a chase, his dad gets killed, so there's traumatic event. Then the main character decides that the bad guy, the serial killer, must be a cop because of the way the guy drives and thinks, which isn't even remotely circumstantial evidence. That's zero evidence.
Right.
There is a scene on a bridge where Bruce Willis tries to talk his cousin off out of jumping off the bridge. That dialogue could be in a dozen different movies. Willis is demoted, signed to a lesser job, and assigned a new partner who's a woman, but is still going to try to catch the serial killer. But kind of brilliantly, it's hard to catch the serial killer and when you're like assigned to just the river, except the serial killer then starts dumping the bodies in the river, which helps out a lot. Of course, there's the we hate each other, then we love each other eventual pairing. At one point, the hero is actually accused of being the bad guy. There are a bunch of red herrings about who the real killer is, and then there's the big twist at the end where it turns out that the guy who killed the Bruce Willis's character's father, played by John Mahoney, was actually that character's brother who was protecting the real serial killer, which was one of Bruce Willis's cousins. So it gets very convoluted at the end, and it feels like they were trying to give you a big twist that kind of felt like it was coming after they gave the red herring of one cousin dies and another cousin leaves town. And then the serial killers stop, the serial murderers stop for a while, and one of them shows back up and they start again. So it makes you think it's this brother, but then they're like, oh no, it was the other brother who we pretended to kill off at the very first part of the movie. And you're like, okay. It is a great example of Bruce Willis in the early 90s doing a lot of the behind the scenes research. It sounds like he was at the height of his popularity and therefore had probably more control than he should have. Mm-hmm. They had to do several cuts of the movie. He and the director did not get along very well. The director's name being Rowdy Harrington, which sounds like the name of a wrestler, not a director. I was going to say. Yeah. Evidently, Willis had a lot of control and changed a lot of things. The movie was recut after some negative reviews on the previews when people would watch it, the test audiences. It opened very well on the first weekend. It made $8 million, and then it ended up only grossing $25 million on its entire run. So everybody who was a Bruce Willis fan, and maybe that was me and whoever I went with, my friends or my dad, saw it that first weekend, and then nobody went the second weekend, and word of mouth did not help it out. So it is another historically box office bomb, bad movie with horrible reviews that Adam absolutely loves. So if you are thinking about watching a Bruce Willis movie tonight and you want to try something new but still feels very Bruce Willis-y, and you like boats and you kind of want to watch a movie where Sarah Jessica Parker seems likable, I say try out Striking Distance.
I have to say, I've never heard of it.
I know it was in the theaters very quickly. It doesn't get a lot of repeat. He's done over 100 movies, and there are so many good ones that it feels really weird that on this really, sort of sad day of him announcing his retirement, I would go and pick a movie that is horribly reviewed. But even in this, it is, an enjoyable watch and something that at least once a year over the last, since streaming became a thing, I will find as a recommendation on a streaming service and I will end up watching. So it is enough that I've probably seen it a dozen times, and that gets the A-side seal of approval for watching a movie that everyone else hates.
You know what movie I thought you were going to pick? He's basically a cop in space, I believe, in this one.
Fifth Element?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Fifth Element it might be in my top 20 movies all time.
I love Fifth Element.
It's so good.
The blue opera singer.
That scene, the way that scene is filmed, where you've got her on stage and the juxtaposition of the firefight happening in the suite between the good guys and the bad guys, and how Luke Besson does an amazing job of cinematography with that movie completely, but that scene especially, where it is happening at the same time, the music, it almost feels like a music video where like everything is tied together, but there's still this explosive and like destructive part of it. I could talk about Fifth Element all day. In fact, I've long debated getting the four symbols, the wind, water, earth, air symbols as a tattoo, just because I love that movie so much.
Wow. It is a really good one, though.
Yeah,
it's really good.
So good. And it brought us Mila Jovanovic. It gave Chris Tucker the most absurd and wonderful supporting role in the world. Gary Oldman is amazing. It's so good. It's such a
Man,
great movie. Tiny Lister's in it as the president, which is so
I
cool.
know, which is
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. It's there is not a bad step in that entire film. I mean, it's even probably Luke Perry's best performance.
Oh yeah, he is in it,
And
isn't
he's only
he?
in it for like 3 minutes, but that's probably his best performance up until Riverdale. Like that in the 8 seconds. He got 8 seconds, The Fifth Element, and then 20 years pass and he does Riverdale.
Oh man, Luke Perry.
Now, another one gone way too soon.
All right.
All right, so that's the A side.
That's the A side. All right. All right. So this week, I kind of not at a loss because, well, it's unfortunately a genre where there's way too many to choose from. But I saw this one and I kind of debated Adam because I know how you feel about not cleanly wrapped up endings.
Yeah, unfinished stories are not my favorite,
I understand that, but
sometimes they're important.
This
and
one,
a lot of true crime is unfinished.
Yeah. So this one is about 3 young girls who were Girl Scouts. I was actually a Girl Scout for a brief amount of time.
Did you sell cookies?
I did.
No.
Well, I should say
I could see you were good at selling cookies.
Well, I will give my mom credit where credit is due. Mom sold cookies.
I feel like that happens a lot, though. I mean, like, did you ever had the world's finest chocolate bars in grade school?
Yes.
Yeah. And everybody's parents just took them to the office. And
Yep.
I don't know, like people would buy them just because it was the only food. And who knows how old those chocolate bars are. But I never sold a single world's finest chocolate bar. And I think one year I won like a t-shirt. So somebody did.
Well, and the other thing with that was like, I wasn't, okay, I talk about my mom being overprotective, which she was, don't get me wrong. And I, as now a true crime aficionado, I get it. But like, I wasn't allowed to go like door to door either. So
yeah.
The options were like sell to family or she takes them to work.
Yeah. But I think I don't know that anyone goes door to door now. I can't imagine that.
No.
I mean, I see kids set up like the Girl Scouts that I have seen have the best success. Or when I was working before the pandemic, I worked at a brewery on the weekends, and we would have Girl Scouts come and set up, a table of cookies right next to the bar, and then people were like, "Oh, I'm getting a beer, but I just will get a box of cookies."
Yeah,
because they're like, today's not diet day.
Yeah, I think I'm in an apartment now, but I think even when I was you have to like buzz in, but I think even when you could just walk up to my door. I think the last time I had someone actually, like a little kid, actually come to the door, it was probably maybe a year before the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, then you throw in the pandemic. But so these 3 girls are Girl Scouts.
So Girl Scouts. So this is the case of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. Camp Scott is in Mays County. It's the campsite in Oklahoma for Girl Scouts. It's, like I said, it's operated in Mays County. It started operations in 1928. It's located about 50 miles from Tulsa's Girl Scout headquarters.
Okay.
So in the summer of 1977, the counselors met their campers on June 12th. Michelle Hoffman happened to be one of the counselors that year because she had aged out of being a camper. I can totally relate to that, going to the YMCA camp, because I went to the Y camp until I was too old to go to the camp and then became a counselor. So I totally get that.
Absolutely.
So she spots in the crowd of 130 parents and kids, Doris Denise Milner. Doris Denise Milner was a young African-American girl who was very shy. And of course, she was nervous to be away from home. But Michelle spots her. She goes over, she greets her, and she puts Doris and her mom at ease, telling them Doris is going to have a great time. Don't worry. Before we get into Doris and her friends, let's get a little history. So about 2 months before camp started, there was an on-site training session at the camp. And one of the counselors discovered that her belongings had been ransacked, and she'd also had like some snacks, like donuts in her bag, and they were gone. The donuts were gone, but the box still remained. And inside the box was a handwritten note in all caps that said, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in one tent." This note is turned over to the camp director,
Yeah.
who treats it like it's a prank. They were like, okay, this is just some weird, creepy prank. And they throw the note away.
I'm sure, it's the 70s. Slasher films are having people die at camps all the time.
Right. So about 7 p.m. on Sunday, June 12th, the same day that camp started, June 12th of 1977, a thunderstorm hits the area and 3 girls are huddled together in their tent. You've got 10-year-old Doris, who, like I said, who was shy, and Michelle had convinced her, you're going to have a good time. And she meets 2 other young girls. She meets Lori Farmer and Michelle Gus. So the 3 girls have this instant connection. They like sing songs before the storm starts. They're singing camp songs, and they're sharing laughs, and they're doing everything that you're supposed to do at a summer camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a storm hits, so the 3 girls huddled together in their tent. The girls were all residents of Broken Arrow, which is a suburb of Tulsa. They were sharing tent 8 in the camp's Kiowa unit, which is located the furthest away from the counselor's tent, and it's kind of obscured from the showers of the camp. Well, about 6 a.m. on the 13th, a camp counselor who's on her way to the showers, she spots the sleeping bag. First, she spots 10-year-old Doris. Seeing her body, this camp counselor runs for help. So they come back, and next are discovered Lori Lee Farmer and Michelle Heather Gus. All 3 girls had been in tent 8 and had been murdered. Their bodies had been left on a trail leading to the showers about 150 yards from their tent. So, of course, the bodies are collected, they're tested, and it found that they had been raped, strangled, and beaten. Police investigate the campsite, and they find a large red flashlight on top of one of the girls' bodies. Plus, there had been duct tape and cords were found as well. There was also a pair of glasses that were found with a fingerprint on the lens of the glasses. The fingerprint was never identified. It's the 70s. They're, the testing and all that was just not up to par yet. There was also a footprint from a size 9.5 shoe that was found in blood in the tent. But then there were also other varying size footprints found in the tent. So police reveal that there had been reports of eerie noises throughout the night. Like, one counselor heard the noises and goes out to check and investigate about 1:30 in the morning, but they're unable to find anything. A camper in the next tent over, tent number 7, woke up about a half an hour later when a flashlight was turned on and shone, whatever, in their face.
Yeah.
About 3 a.m., another young girl screams, and then another girl is heard crying, "Mama, Mama." A nearby landowner claims to have heard an unusual amount of traffic near Camp Scott between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on the road. So Jean Leroy Hart was a prisoner who had escaped and had been at large since 1973, when he escaped from Mays County Jail.
So for 4+ years.
4+ years. Now remember, Camp Scott is also in Mays County. He had been convicted of raping and kidnapping 2 pregnant women, as well as 4 counts of first-degree burglary. Jean Leroy Hart had been raised about a mile from Camp Scott. He was a member of the Cherokee Nation, and he was arrested at the home of a Cherokee medicine man. Police were under the impression that Jean had been sheltered by the Cherokee community all this time. It took 40 FBI agents to track him down at that home of the Cherokee medicine man. It was the largest and longest manhunt in Oklahoma history at that time. So his trial goes from March 19th to May 3rd. And the sheriff of the county, the local sheriff said he was 100% certain that Jean Leroy Hart was guilty. Well, during the trial, prosecution argued that the glasses that, they had found on the site had been
one with the fingerprint that they couldn't
with
identify.
the fingerprint. They were saying that they were Jean Leroy's, and that he had stolen them from someone and dropped them by accident. There was also hair and tape. There was also hair found on the duct tape, and they were saying that it resembled his. His defense claimed that the glasses had been taken from one of his previous rape victims, and that Sheriff Weaver planted the glasses along with the hair.
Oh, so there was
100%.
The guarantee.
There was a waitress at a local diner, her name Dean Boyd, and she testified that she'd seen a nervous man at her diner, which is about 15 miles from Camp Scott, on the morning of the murders. She identified that man not as Jean Leroy Hart, but as William Stevens, a man that had been convicted of rape of an 11-year-old camper.
So now we have an alternative theory.
Dwayne Peters, who was a friend of Stevens, of William Stevens, claimed that he had loaned William the flashlight that had been found at the scene, and that Stevens had also admitted to the murder.
Wow. So that's more than just another theory.
So a local jury of 6 men and 6 women, they deliberate for how long do you think, Adam?
Well, this is the murder of 3 young girls, so you would think that they would be very involved. I would assume it's got to be a couple of days at least, right?
You'd think they'd be really meticulous, right?
Yeah. You don't want, this is not something you rush through. In most cases, people, when they were dealing with something, like a murder charge, want to make sure they got it right.
No, it was just a mere few minutes. It was just a matter of minutes that they deliberated, and they found him not guilty. So he was acquitted of the 3 murders. But remember, Jean Leroy is an escaped prisoner and convicted rapist. So he still had 305 years of his 308-year sentence left to serve. So he was sent off to Oklahoma State Penitentiary on June 4th.
You got to wonder if the jury was like, let's this guy's not getting out anyway. We don't know for sure. If we convict him, then we find other evidence, we can't convict the other person. So, maybe they were looking, maybe they were looking big picture.
That's possible. That is possible because that information was given to them during the trial.
Yeah. So. They're like, hey, this guy's already going to jail.
Yeah.
Let's go get lunch.
So he's sent back to Oklahoma State Penitentiary. And on June 4th of 1979, Jean Leroy Hart collapses and dies of a heart attack at the age of 35. He had been out in the prison yard lifting weights and jogging. Got to stay in shape.
Yeah, got 305 years to go. So long time. Although if you have a heart attack at age 39, after 35. An hour of lifting weight, 35, then I don't think the odds were good for you making it 309 years. So
yeah, probably not. So 2 of the victims' families ended up suing the Magic Empire Council.
This is the group that ran the camp, or this?
Yes, this is the group that ran the camp, and they sued them for $5 million, alleging negligence. It was a civil trial, and it included the discussion of that note that was found 2 months before camp started.
Yeah, should they have done something more?
They also talked about the fact that tent 8, in which the girls were sleeping in, was 86 yards from the counselor's tent. In 1985, by a vote of 9-3, the jurors decided in favor of Magic Empire, which meant they were saying they were not negligent.
Right. You get a threatening note that talks very specifically about a thing that happens, within 10 days or so, then who knows?
Yeah.
Feels pretty obvious to me. But then again, I wasn't there for the court case.
Right. So in 1989, DNA testing was conducted that showed 3 of the 5 probes matched Jean Leroy Hart's DNA. So statistically, DNA from 1 in 7,700 Native Americans would obtain these results, which pretty, I mean, it's not conclusive, but kind of conclusive here.
Right.
In 2008, authorities conducted new DNA testing on stains found on a pillowcase, the results of which proved inconclusive because the samples were too deteriorated to obtain a DNA profile. So it means that the DNA, it's possible that it came from one of the victims, but it's also possible that it came from a woman who may have been present at the time of the murders. Sherry Farmer, victim Lori's mother, said that she said, quote, "I've always felt in my gut there was a girl present. Given the DNA results, you have to wonder if there wasn't also a female who took part in the murders."
Right. I mean, I don't know how one person could kidnap three people from the same tent without there being more of a ruckus, but
raising some suspicion. Yeah, some
right.
noise,
Yeah.
something. Yeah. In 2017, $30,000 in donations were raised by the sheriff in order to do new DNA testing using the latest advances in testing. As of right now, those tests are still inconclusive, and we do not have an answer in this case. Richard Gus, the father of Michelle, went on to help the state legislature pass the Oklahoma Victims Bill of Rights. He also helped to found the Oklahoma Crime Victims Compensation Board. Sherry Farmer, who was Lori's mother, founded the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children, a support group. Camp Scott shut its doors the day after the murders and has never had campers again. It is, however, a frequent site for visits for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts who claim that the ghosts of the three girls have been spotted.
No, well, I don't like that.
The camp was sold in the 1980s, but the new owners haven't really done much with it.
You tear it down and you turn it into something else. No one's going to go stay at that camp.
Right.
Yeah.
In 2011, John Russell, who was convicted of embezzlement and check fraud, announced that he was making Candles, a film about the murders at Camp Scott. John Russell decided to make a film about the case because he said that while he was in jail in 1979 in Ottawa County, one of his fellow inmates, Carl Lee Myers, confessed to the killings. Carl Lee was a convicted murderer who died in prison in 2012 while on death row for the 1996 killing of a young woman named Cindy Marzano. Before his death, police linked him to the rape and murder of another woman named Sean Williams, but officials never connected him officially to the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. As of today, Candles, as far as I could find, still had not been released.
It's okay. I don't know that I don't know the world is knocking down the door for that movie.
There are several books that have been written about the murders. We have Tent Number 8, written by Gloyd McCoy. It's a detailed dissection of the trial and the evidence. The book has insight that can't be found anywhere else. There's also the Camp Scott murders, which is it's an encyclopedia of events, people, and locations that all are involved in the murder. And Someone Cry for the Children. It was the very first book written about the case. It's written by two of the case's lead investigators. It's out of print, but you can still get it at some places, and it's
Amazon, eBay. You can
exactly.
If you're willing to pay, you'll find it.
Exactly. But there you have it. That is the case of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders.
Well, hopefully down the road we'll be able, because we've heard so many times with cases where now that we've got these much more robust DNA databases, and they raised money to do the DNA testing with modern equipment in 2017. Mm-hmm. Hopefully now there's, it may take years, but sometimes we find somebody's, grandchild or cousin that there's enough markers that we can tie it back to get a more definitive answer of who it might be.
I just, it's so sad to me the very first day, these girls are away from home. They've made new friends. They're just trying to live their life and enjoy childhood. And some horrific monster does this.
And you know how easy it would have been. And I know this is, real easy for me to say in hindsight, but you get a note like that and you don't just have somebody stay up and walk around the camp.
And again, I agree with you. Easy to say in hindsight, but like you could do shifts of and even if you didn't want them to be by themselves, do 2-person shifts of counselors.
Something like, I mean, I guess again, it's probably that's something that every camp does. But as a parent, I'd be like, hey, that sounds like a nice camp. Because who knows? It's not just murderers and rapists. You'd be like animals or kids sneaking out and doing stuff, it wandering off and getting lost in the wood because they're sleepwalking. Like, doesn't seem like a horrible idea.
Yeah. I do hope that this gets solved, like you said, with the advancements and, retesting and things like that. And not that it's okay that it was a single male that did it, but if we find out that there was a woman involved, like, I don't know, that just feels so much, it just feels so much worse. And I know women are capable of murder but like typically the women that we have talked about, the murders they've committed, not that it's okay, but the murders they've committed have been within their own family,
Right.
and
it's usually a different type of murder.
Yeah, it's always been for like a financial gain. To find like a woman who's just willing to just go off with this dude who rapes and beats and kills these young girls, it's like, ugh. That would
be another level to the depravity.
Yes, 100%.
Not that there's any acceptable level of depravity.
Right. Exactly. But
there is worse.
You get what I'm saying. It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's just based on what we've talked about with women. It's usually, oh, I'm doing this for financial gain. We don't typically see women.
Or to better their station in life, or if sometimes to protect themselves or revenge. It's very rarely just for the sake of murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Something as seemingly depraved and senseless. And in my opinion, there's no way that note's not connected. But then again, it's super easy for me to say after the fact, but come on.
100% connected. And, again, hindsight, why didn't you turn it in? But
yeah, or whoever got turned in, like, yeah, it's easy to I mean, I guess I would hate to be the person who got the note and then did nothing about it.
Yeah.
You have to think that person's been haunted for a very long time as well.
But there you go. That is the case of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. So that's the B-side.
So as always, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to our website, asidebsidepodcast.com. You can follow us on all of the streaming services like Stitcher. So close. It wasn't right though. I was just going to keep blowing by it. A-side, B-side, podcast.square.site. Here I am big and brave, and I'm going to do the wrap up. I'm just going to step into it. I'm going to say all the words because I remember everything. I'll be so proud of myself. And then it's like the kid's walking onto the stage and immediately trips and falls on his face.
I'm so proud of you. Keep going.
Yeah. Or you get the first word. It was like, okay, your first word at the spelling bee is apple. I'd be like, obviously, A-B-B-L-E. I mean, P. All right. So you can go to our website, A-side, B-side, podcast.square.site. You can like and subscribe on all of your favorite streaming services, whether that is iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We've got a YouTube channel that you can follow along if you like to play through YouTube, because sometimes YouTube works better when you're on your phone or something because you want to be able to listen, but then open up the app and do something else. And if you've got YouTube Premium, the audio can keep playing, which I find is really nice. You can always go to buyusacopy.com. And buy Brooke a coffee because she has to edit all of the stuff that doesn't go right, which is a lot. You can buy our merch on our website as well. We've got some stuff on there. We're going to be getting a thong soon. I don't think that's on there yet, and a banana hammock. But we don't have those yet.
Not yet,
but
but they're coming. Uh-huh.
yeah, those are coming. You got the shower curtains, t-shirts. Get a hoodie for your baby that looks like a blanket because then they can grow into it. Now they've got a hoodie when you grow older, so you really don't have to buy a hoodie later. So it's like buying a blanket and a hoodie and planning ahead. Who doesn't love
Right.
planning ahead?
Exactly.
It's a great idea. So we thank you for all of your support. And if you have a story that you would like Brooke to look into, or you have a movie that you're curious if Adam has seen, or you remember half of a plot of a movie that you can't find and you want somebody who doesn't sleep to do the research for you, just reach out to us and we'll get on that. Follow us on the Instagram, on Facebook. You can like and share our posts. We post every episode on Friday. So you can just make it part of your Friday morning work avoidance routine to bookmark our page and then like and share the post and then even listen to it right then or save it for later. So
look at you. I'm so proud of you.
I know. I really, it was rough at the beginning. I think the meme would say they had us at the beginning. I'm going to tell you that, but we came back.
All right. Well, there you go. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.